Hello? Oh, this thing's on.
Hello.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Command Block Unleashed panel. Thank you guys for coming. Have you guys had a good day? You guys had a good day?
Been a long day.
It's been a long day for me. I don't know about you guys, but I'm really excited to be here. This is Command Blocks hold a special place in my heart. For those of you who don't know who we are, I am Seth Bling. This is Simply Sark. Say hello.
Hello. Simply Sark here.
Dragnose.
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 Hey, Americans with their noses.
We are all command blockers. We love command blocks. We breathe them and dream them and everything with command blocks. So we have spent many, many hours learning and perfecting the art of command blocking. So we want to share what we know with you guys, because I know sometimes it seems like you need a college degree to just get started with command blocks, and that's not really true. And so that's why we're up here today. I want to talk a little bit about the format for the panel, how it's going to all go down. We're going to have kind of a preset Q&A session. That is, we've already written down some questions that we think we'd like to answer, kind of questions that we think you guys probably will have for us, and also questions that will reveal something interesting or useful about command blocks. And then after we do that, we're going to open up to the floor for Q&A. So I'll let you know when that's going to happen. I don't know how much. Honestly, I have no idea. It's going to be a really, I think, kind of informal panel. It's cool to have three of us up here, smallest panel I've ever been on, and which is really nice. We'll be able to have a bit of back and forth. So we're going to have some questions that we've written down. I've got them here on my iPad. And so the first half of the questions are sort of about what are command blocks and what's their scope, as what can you do with them, what can't you do with them, what's interesting about them. Then the second half is sort of how do you get into it, how do you learn how to do it, how do you better yourself in terms of your ability to use command blocks. So the first question here is, what are command blocks? I have that written down. And this question is on behalf of all the parents. By the way, everyone who is here with their parents, please turn to them right now and thank them for bringing you to MINECON, because
Very good. Yes.
they don't
Very
really
nice
know
parents.
what's going on. Come on, let's be honest.
Absolutely. I mean, they've got this. For once, they're the ones with the blank stares on
Yeah.
their faces. So yeah,
So-
absolutely.
So let's tell you why your kids are here. So a command block, like it sounds like, is a block. Minecraft is a game of blocks. I'm sure you know at least that. It's a block and it has a command in it. Okay. What can commands do? What can commands do?
Commands can basically allow you to change certain things about the game, the default game. For example, it could possibly change certain mechanics.
You can teleport players around, or
You can add entity. You can add like monsters to the game. You can remove the monsters from the game. You can affect the world kind of in real time by adding a command to this one block and then powering the block.
yeah, or you can take this entire structure over here, copy it over here with just one command. And so these command blocks are very powerful ways to enhance your Minecraft world or change the experience of playing Minecraft in a really fundamental way. But it takes a lot of knowledge to know how to use the commands and what each command does and what it doesn't do. And so also what are command blocks? What are command blocks versus what's redstone? Because a lot of people kind of use the same terms for different things, but they are kind of different things.
Yeah. I mean, the one you require the redstone to power the block.
Yeah.
So you probably say redstone is more the power source behind what's happening, and redstone is more mechanical, I would say. So
Yeah.
it would be the computer that you're using, where the command block is the program that you're using. Would that be a
Yeah, it's a good.
Redstone's basically the circuitry, and command blocks are more
Perfect.
they're quite different, I suppose.
Yeah, they're second circuitry. I think for me the main difference is that command blocks you can only use in creative mode, the kind of cheaty mode, right? whereas Redstone is something that you can have access to and use in survival mode, and you can make some really interesting stuff, but it's not going to just change your entire Minecraft experience the way command blocks can. So that was the first question. Hopefully some of the parents got something out of that. The rest of it, I don't know if you'll.
I mean, does everybody understand that now?
Raise your hands.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, yes, woo. Okay, we're getting
that's
there.
not really the resounding response we wanted, but all right. Thanks for the honesty. All right. Well, the second question is, what are one or two favorite command block contraptions that you've made?
I think my personal favorite of what I've made, it was I basically made a 1x1 8 resolution screen using a falling sand, and it was
It was like a Game Boy Color.
yes,
yeah.
a little bit, yeah.
It was like a Game Boy Color kind
It
of.
was pretty difficult to make, but
Yeah.
I was really happy with it.
That's
So.
cool. For me, my favorite things are always the custom maps because there's so much that goes into them. And we had a whole panel about custom maps earlier, but for instance, a couple weeks ago, I released Splatoon in Minecraft, and I kind of recreated the entire game of Splatoon using command blocks. And you could turn into a squid, and you could shoot paint guns at people, and paint the walls, and all kinds of stuff. And it took a lot of very specialized technical knowledge to make all that happen.
Yeah, but it was still completely vanilla in the
Yeah.
game. Vanilla being the game in no way has changed. If you download the game, you can play it as it is. So
Yeah.
phenomenal achievement that was.
Thanks.
Yeah, well done.
For me, it's actually quite recently, I created for a show called Wonder Quest a fully functioning ecosystem. I mean, that's so far has been for me one of the coolest things I've made, which basically was just what happens if you have rabbits that eat the crops. If too many rabbits eat the crops, they breed, and if the ecosystem isn't balanced, they just keep on breeding until your world crashes, basically. If you then introduce the wolves chase the rabbits, but while they're chasing the rabbits, they will then drop the seeds because they are like kind of rubbing against the plants. And then when you introduce the bees then kind of fertilize and make the crops grow. So that was, for me, one of my coolest things, I think.
Awesome.
All right. The next question is, how did you get started with command blocks?
Ooh.
So for me, I have been playing Minecraft for a while. I first started playing the game like 3.5, 4 years ago. So I was doing a lot of crazy stuff with Redstone before there were even command blocks, and so the second command blocks got added, I was like, okay, well, I'll try this. And they didn't have that much functionality at that point. There weren't very many commands you could put in a command block, and so it was kind of a little bit easier to get a grasp on it. And so I sort of slowly learned as they added one command after another. I figured out everything about the new command because I had a week to learn about it before they added the next command. So I took the long route because I have been doing this for so long.
Yeah, pretty much exactly the same answer there. I started once the command blocks are actually introduced into the game, and it's just like a gradual process, like Seth said. So.
Yeah, for me, I was, it also started before command blocks were actually added to the game. I kind of started playing with Minecraft, and I started my own server, as you do when you're first starting out. And I found a lot of players that came on damaged the area that where you spawn and then killed other players. And when the commands box was added, you were able to then change somebody's game mode. So it allowed you to change a player so that they can no longer actually influence the world. They can no longer break things. They can no longer do things. And that's exactly, I started at that one command, how to change a game mode. And then as Seth said, as they added a new command, I might not necessarily understand the technical aspects of the deep command, but I watch his videos and I understand what he says, and then I use that to change and learn. So yeah, that's kind of how I started as well.
I tend to make a video every time they put out a new snapshot. So I always try and learn what the new commands are and what all of their capabilities are within like an hour, so that I can make a snapshot video. So I definitely learn a lot that way about it. All right. Next question is, what types of things can't be done with command blocks?
Maybe you start on that
All
one.
right, well, I can start with that. There's actually kind of a lot that can't be done with command blocks. I think something we should have said already is command blocks are different than mods, and not everybody fully appreciates that. Command blocks are in the game already. All the commands already exist. You don't have to download anything. If you want to make a command block thing, you can just put down command blocks, right-click, place it, and start typing commands, and it'll work. Whereas mods, you have to download the mod, install it. It can be complicated, and so it's a bit harder to get a mod installed. And it's also different than like server plugins. You go on a server like Hypixel, play Minecraft, whatever. They have all kinds of custom games where you're able to do really interesting things. But that's actually a server mod. It's the server had to write custom code and install that into their server. So it's not really easy to get those set up either. So there are some differences between mods and server plugins and command blocks. But because mods are actually able to do pretty much anything that you'd want to do. I mean, you can actually just turn Minecraft into literally another game by modding it, right?
So I mean, yeah. So modding is really downloading a completely separate thing and then making changes to the core fundamental game, which is, I mean, for me, that's why I started command blocks, because I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I found the way game of doing that.
So I guess like an example of a thing that a mod could do that the command blocks can't are like changing the fundamental physics of Minecraft. You can't change the gravitational constant. You can't change how, you can't really make anti-gravity. You can do some kind of hacky things, but
you can hack
it's
it.
a little bit hard. And there's, I mean, just like you can't change what items are in the game, right? You can kind of make them look different by using resource packs, and you can make them do funny things sometimes, but you can't change necessarily what items do. You can't, yeah. So
you can kind of put like a veil over what they do, I suppose, with command blocks.
It's really you can't really change like mob AIs, how a mob behaves, right? So there's kind of a lot of things that you can't do with command blocks, but there's so much that you can do, and I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time talking about that during the panel.
One big thing that I've recently found that you can't do with command blocks is actually easily add efficient new mobs into the game. So, for example, you can't add polar bears or camels or there's a need for it, believe me.
Yeah.
But
there are ways to kind of make things look like they're new mobs or something.
Yeah,
but
it's not very efficient.
It's always a hack, and there's always some way to see through it.
Exactly.
So there are limitations. So you should be aware of those if before you decide to launch into a project. If it's not possible, obviously you're not going to be able to do it. All right, let's move on to the next question. Why does everyone seem to use armor stands so much? Okay, so I don't know how many. Do you guys watch a lot of command block videos? Anyone? Does anyone here watch videos about command block contraptions?
5 people, maybe.
About 5 people. Okay.
And do you guys know what an armor stand is?
Yeah. Okay.
Do you know what it's used for?
Okay. Well, in the world of command blocks, it sure isn't used for putting armor on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Armor stands are. I mean, they look like wooden stands, right? And in survival Minecraft, you put armor on them, and they look nice.
That's pretty much it. Look at that. Yeah.
No, we don't do that. The cool thing about armor stands is that you can do things with them that make them very nice for just holding a place in the world, right? Representing a location or a point.
They give you a lot of freedom with like aesthetical things, like if you wanted to create a chair or something with an armor stand that is.
Yeah, because you could make armor stands invisible, and theoretically you can put any kind of block on their head or in their arm. You can have just a block that's floating in midair, or something in their arm that's floating in midair, and you can make them invisible, make them immune to gravity, make them invulnerable, so that the player can't actually interact with them, and there's just something there that they can't interact with. And that's something that's totally different than survival Minecraft. You just can't really do that.
Yeah. Or you can make them dance the Macarena.
You can make them dance the Macarena. That's true. For 10 hours.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about armor stands is, as well, you can actually, and I think that's going to be one of the questions that's next, is that it is seen as what is called an entity in the game. So it's seen as let's say a person in the game, and you can run commands, you can tell that person to do something, okay? Yeah. And you can give that person something called a scoreboard score, which we will also get to at the moment.
It's the next question.
That's the next question. Yeah, but they go very, very much hand in hand, and that gives you an incredible amount of freedom, because in the past you had to have a player at a specific spot to do something, to run a command. Now you just plop down a armor stand, make it invisible.
And you can make the armor stand with a command, right? Use the /summon
Exactly.
command.
Exactly. You can make it
Or
move,
teleport it around with a /TP command, or all kinds of things.
Yeah, it acts and behaves exactly like a mob, except it doesn't have any AI.
Except it doesn't actually act or behave, right?
Exactly. Unless you tell it to.
So they're just incredibly useful, and just for kind of a variety of reasons. But if you want to learn about command blocks, you're going to want to learn about armor stands.
Absolutely. That's fundamental.
Yeah. So the next question is about scoreboards. Why does everyone seem to use the scoreboard so much?
So who actually uses scoreboards? Yeah? Yay.
There's no. So they added scoreboards to the game. It's this nice scoreboard like on the right-hand side. Well, I guess for you guys, the right-hand side of the screen, and it displays lists of names and a score next to them. It can show you how many times a player has died or how many kills a player's gotten, and so it keeps track of their score, right? You can also have what are called dummy scoreboard objectives that you can control with command blocks. So you can have something on this. You can have a scoreboard called points, and whenever Dragnaz captures the flag, we give him a point, and it displays that in the points section. So that's what you'd think scoreboards are for, right? Displaying. That's not what we use them for, though. Like that's even something that was made for command blocks.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I think the original use, like armor stands, was to do something completely different until the likes of us got our hands on it.
Yeah,
it's just slowly evolved over time to become something completely different.
So the reason that the scoreboard is so useful is that you can set scores for a player or a spider or an armor stand, and then you can do something if the player has a certain range of scores. So like, what's a good example? Okay.
On the spot now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, you can distinguish one player or one score or one entity from the other by giving it different scores.
Or you could, using the points example, if you wanted the game to end after 3 captures of the capture the flag, right? Increment a player's score, and then when it hits 3, you can do something. Tell everyone that the game's over and teleport the players back to the lobby, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and for example as well, let's say, I'm going to use this bee example again. Let's say when you drop down a bag of bees, you want 20 bees to come out of the bag. What you can do is you give that bag a score of 20, a scoreboard score of 20, and then every time you add a new bee to the world, you remove one of that score from that 20. So it slowly counts down. By the time it reaches 0, it stops. So you now know for a fact you had 20 of these things in the world. That's one example.
Yeah. You can also do arithmetic with the scoreboard. So you can multiply things by each other, and so you can actually, it almost becomes like a pretty reasonable calculator. It just requires a lot of commands to use. So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much the scoreboard. They're super useful, and basically every single command block I place has something about a scoreboard in it. They're everywhere. The next question is also about something that's everywhere. In the world of command blocks, what are clocks? So.
You guys know what a clock is?
That's kind of like a redstone question almost, isn't it, with clocks?
It is, but you need them so much for command blocks all the time. And you can do them a little bit differently with command blocks too.
See, with command blocks too, so you've got this block, you've got the command in it, but you need to actually run that command. So what the clock does, it constantly runs that command as a clock would by tick, 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 ticking
every
off.
time, tick, tick. Every time it runs the command.
Every
and so you get to run the command over and over again.
So if we use Seth's example of capturing the flag, you would have a clock running on a command block that constantly checks who has what score. So you can't just put a command block down and say, okay, well, tell me when this person reaches 3 flags. You need to constantly power that to constantly check if that is the case.
Yeah. The most common type of clock that I use is what I like to call a 20 hertz clock. What hertz means is times per second. So 20 times per second, it's a frequency, right? 20 times per second, you run whatever command is in the blocks that are on that clock. And 20 times a second is the fastest that you can do in Minecraft. So this is really, really useful. If you want to make command block contraptions, you'll probably end up using one of these 20 hertz clocks, and basically, if you ever see, in any of my videos, if you ever see a line of redstone blocks with a command block on either side, that's what that is. All of those command blocks, they look like they're sitting still, but they're going 20 times a second. They're trying to run their command, and some of them are succeeding and some of them are failing.
Exactly.
So
that's the fill clock, by the way.
yeah, fill clock.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
There's
sure
other
we
clocks.
get that question.
In redstone, there's other types of clocks, but we don't. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you have command blocks, you just
Yeah.
use fill clocks.
I use other clocks from
Yeah.
time to time.
You probably Google fill
Yeah.
clock if you wanted to read more about it or hear more about it.
I mean, it's just one big thing is we always, I mean, I'm sure you guys get this question as well. Somebody would say, I tried to recreate what you've made, I put the redstone block on top of it, and it's not working. So coming back to what Seth said, if you see a line of redstone blocks on command blocks, it is a clock that's running. It's not just a plain. Yeah,
And you need to specifically set it up to do that.
Yes,
right?
you
It
do,
needs
yes.
certain commands. So.
you do, yeah.
Yeah. All right, I guess next question. If you could add a new command or new feature for command blocks, what would it be? And we do happen to have a certain Mojang employee in the audience, so if he happens to hear some good ideas and likes them, I wouldn't, complain.
Shall I go first?
Sure.
My one's the best one, so.
Oh, we'll see.
I think it'd be great if we could have basically like an import command, which would basically allow you to clone, similar to the clone command, to clone like a schematic from hosted online from a server or something into a world. Like that, we could update pre-existing maps, which would be very, very cool.
Especially with new versions that,
Yes.
yeah,
Absolutely.
we won't go
Interesting.
there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm thinking of all the things I could do. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. What I would like. Okay, I'm going to use some technical words, then I'll explain what they mean. I would like to be able to get NBT data into the scoreboard and vice versa. Okay, those don't mean anything to most of you probably. What I'm talking about here is every mob in the game, every creeper, every spider, every player has a bunch of data about them, where they are. Their position is data. Their motion, their movement is data. The velocity that they
Their
have.
health. Their health is.
If a wolf is tamed, then it has a value of 1 in that spot, whereas if it's not tamed, it has a value of 0. So every mob has
It's
some
somewhat
sort
similar to the scoreboard in a way. It sort
Yeah.
of tells you a little bit about, so it sort of retains some information about that entity or mob.
yeah.
It's kind of the blueprint of that mob, of what it can
Right,
do, where
yeah.
it is in the world, and what
Just
it can do.
everything the game
Yeah.
needs in order to know where the mob is, what it's doing,
Yeah.
and what it should be doing. And so what I'm talking about is being able to take, let's take for instance a black hole, right? You have a black hole, and you have a player near the black hole. So you could take the X, Y, and Z coordinate of the black hole and the X, Y, Z coordinate of the player, and calculate a vector between those. And okay, then maybe that's too big a word too. I don't know. For some of the kids, I don't know. Anyway, you can figure out where the player is relative to the black hole, and then kind of change the player's motion so that he's moving in towards the black hole, and so he gets sucked in, right? And the closer he is to the black hole, the faster he gets sucked in.
And that basically would allow you to change the physics of the game.
Yeah, it would.
I've seen that happen before, though, with the.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can
but
kind of
it's-
do
but
it. It's a little bit hacky,
Yeah.
and it'd be actually a very small number of command blocks if you had this
No,
feature.
I mean, a big thing of the hacky way of doing things, we've mentioned that a few times now, is that it's not practical to use that unless you're only doing a concept. If you're doing a map or you're doing anything else, it's not practical to
It needs
have
to be
these
efficient. It
wonderful
needs to be
things.
efficient, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It needs to be efficient, and it needs to
Yes.
be kind of robust. It needs to, if the player does something unexpected or weird, that it needs to still work. Yeah, so that's kind of what we mean when we say hacky.
Yeah.
Doesn't stand up to that.
So for me, it's actually being able to determine where a player is actually looking. So it's probably very similar to what you're talking about, but
Okay.
being able to do something with where they're looking.
Yes. That'd be great.
Because at the moment there are ways of doing it, and you've done it before, but you need like 100 command blocks to absolutely to detect every single iteration of where you might be in the X, Y. Well, now we're going technical again. Whether you're looking up, down, left, or right. That would be a cool cool thing to have
Yeah.
access
Yeah,
to.
I've definitely found myself
I
wishing
wanted
I-
that a lot of times. Like
And
guns
you
things.
can do it actually. I made like a portal gun, or no,
What's
sorry,
that?
gravity gun, where you
Gravity-
could you could right click on like a cow and move it around and then shoot it off in this direction. But it required hundreds of command blocks, and
Which makes it
which
impractical.
you couldn't really make a game out of that because it would
Exactly.
just.
I think you could do your thing as with my feature though. So mine's better.
Yeah. Oh really? you could, but it's more efficient though.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's they're also yeah. I don't know. Well, we'll see. We'll see which if any of those make it into the
The
game.
audience
and
can
yeah.
decide.
Well, specifically one member of the audience. Okay. All right. So the next question is, what's the hardest part of working with command blocks?
I think that the hardest part is at the very beginning when you're trying to design maybe a certain mechanism of trying to figure out the most efficient way about doing it, because there's basically lots of paths you can take with that, and you don't want to go, halfway down the project and then you're like, oh no, I should have done this way, and you can't change anything. So, and that's the bit tricky part.
I think the hardest part is actually when you've done a bunch of work already and you're trying to keep track of what you've already done. And it's like, what scoreboard values did I use? And like, where's the command blocks that do, this part? And crap, something's not working. Where was that part of the command blocks? So I think that's the hardest part.
What I've always found, I could never understand why certain things don't work. I mean, you guys who kind of do the deeper level of things, if you lay command blocks in a certain line but not in that line, that doesn't work. But if you do it that way, that works. And if you stand on one leg and hand in the air, woo!
There
Normally
are
always like a spelling mistake or something.
People who do crazy things with command blocks find bugs all the
Yes.
time, and they're bugs that nobody runs into unless they're trying to do crazy things with command blocks. They're not like super high priority to get fixed, but they can create just weird behavior that you just don't expect in it. And so if you're trying to fix a problem, it can be insanely hard sometimes to figure out what the problem actually is, because it's actually a bug in the game, right?
So I've always found I've done things exactly the same way, but it just doesn't work. But anyway, next.
All right. So we're gonna kind of move on to like how to learn. So the next question is, what's the best way a novice can get started with command blocks?
Okay. Well, basically, YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to say
definitely.
YouTube is probably not even for.
By the way, you can find us on youtube.com/. Okay.
Dragnar.
Right.
Jagnos actually does have a lot of really good command block sort of
Yeah.
step-by-step tutorials actually.
But I kind of, as I said, I understand what Seth does. I don't necessarily understand the pure coding behind it, but once he's explained something, I'm able to actually explain it even much more in a simpler way that is accessible to more people. Is that
I'd say that's
Yeah.
the right way of saying it. Yeah.
I used to try and really go through.
now you just go.
You got big.
look how
It's
fantastic."
do it anymore.
They get so complicated
But that's
now.
the
It's
thing, I
so
know.
hard to.
And to show them, it'll take like an hour video to explain the whole. I know
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So,
Um,
sorry.
But yeah, there are just a ton of great tutorial videos,
Yeah.
and you don't necessarily need a tutorial video for like what are armor stands, because that's a huge topic. I would say try and find little projects and tutorials for little projects and just re-implement them yourself. And in the process of doing that, you'll have to figure out what each command does and why it's important to the whole thing, because sometimes it's just really not obvious what a command is doing or why you need it. And so I think
That's a great.
I think just doing it yourself, but maybe even copying someone at the beginning is not a bad way to
No.
learn.
Also, I'd say just sort of taking it slowly and not trying to learn absolutely everything. Like much like how we all learned it just from playing it from the beginning. Just sort of maybe take one or two commands, sort of get to know it a little bit, and then move on to the next. And after a couple of months, you'll be an awesome.
You'll start
command
using
blocker.
them.
The wiki is also the Minecraft wiki is a very comprehensive source of information. Sometimes it has too much information.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of the time it has too much information, but it can be a good way if you like encountering a new command that you've never seen before. You can read about what it does and how you might write your own commands with that.
Especially when you start dealing with MBT data and the deeper
Yes.
stuff. Then wikis, to this day, I have a wiki bookmarked.
The chunk format is
Chunk- oh,
invaluable.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever heard of a guy called Skyliner?
Skyliner.
Yeah, he's a forum moderator. He has a whole site where he's listed every single NBT, what NBT goes with which entity and out what it does. Okay, check it out. Check it out.
All right.
Everyone.
I use
Will
that
do.
daily.
Yeah, and then just, I mean, forums can be a great place too. You can just ask for help, and a lot of people are just, they're just looking around and they want to help. So
That's the big thing, yeah. The community is, I mean, Minecraft has one of the best communities that help people, you know, learn how to do things. It's great.
all right, so hopefully that helps. The next question is, if you already know a little bit about command blocks, how can you get into the more complicated builds like custom maps? And to be honest, I think this is the hardest question amongst the pre-selected questions.
I think it's just sort of a thing of just keeping at it for long enough and not giving up and just keep making things. And eventually, you know, it's not going to be an instant thing. And just, you know, eventually you will find that you have improved from where you were 6 months ago or something.
Yeah, just keep trying new things all the time. One thing that can be useful if you're trying to learn, really, this doesn't just apply to command blocks. If you're trying to learn something, I know this works for programming too, is figure out what you want to do, figure out what you want to accomplish, and then figure out what it takes to get there. And to do that, you might look at other people who have done similar things. You can even just download their command block contraptions and see what it took for them to make it work. And you can learn a lot from
Building
it.
it even perhaps, like I said earlier.
Yeah, exactly. But as Sarkin said as well, in time you will just find yourself doing that.
Yeah.
You'll find yourself pushing the boundaries because, you know, a teleport is no longer good enough. You know, you now want to teleport entities. So you'll get there. Just keep at it.
Just keep learning.
At it.
Always keep learning. Pretty much. Okay. And then the next question is, how do new groundbreaking techniques come about? So that's like when somebody discovers something completely new. What's an example? We had one backstage. We had one.
Did we?
Just
Never
like
did.
something like, you know, we were talking about the gravity gun earlier, right? You're pointing it in a direction and it does something in that direction. And that's, I don't know if anyone's done anything to the precision that I did it there. And so the question is, how do we do it? Right?
Well, I'm going to be honest, it's an accident. It's
Sometimes, yeah.
you're pushing the game, and then you get an unexpected result, and then you start using, you know, analyze what went wrong, and then, you know, start exploiting what went wrong and start using that.
Sometimes it's that you go look back at an old video that somebody made, and they're complaining, oh, like I wish this worked, or like, and it turns out it does work now. They've added its secret feature. Again, Sarge is in the audience, and he loves his secret features. But it's just like looking at old features that people haven't thought about in a long time in the light of new, just like new things that are available, new commands that are available, and whatever, new features. It can sometimes just lead you to something that should have been obvious, but no one was thinking about the two things at the same time.
It's happened so many times. Obvious things.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like it's a little bit of a puzzle piece. Like you may have 5 features, but you need a 6th piece to make whatever you want to make. And maybe like a year down the line, that 6th piece is added, but nobody really realizes what it does in the big picture. And then, but you do because you were looking for it, and then you can just try and create it, and it often works like that, at least for me.
Next question is coding similar to command blocks, so programming, writing code? I mean, I was a software engineer at Microsoft before I was a full-time YouTuber, and so I did a lot of coding, and it's probably not a coincidence that I kind of excel at command blocks. I think they are very similar. They have a lot of very similar topics. The actual particulars of what you're doing are extremely different. They're so different, but just being able to logically look at a problem and break it down into sub-problems is something you have to do all the time in coding, and it's something you have to do all the time with command blocks. And I think there's a lot of similarities in terms of just how you have to structure your thought how you have to think about problems.
That is a very, very big thing. It's the process you follow to create a contraption would be very, very similar to the process you would follow to do a program. Because that's basically what our contraptions are, is programs in Minecraft.
Yeah, kind of. It's just on a weird, it's like a weird computer.
Yeah.
Where the computer's Minecraft. Like
The one that's
it's a
all
little
dusty
weird,
and stuff, yeah.
but yeah, I think they're very relevant to each other.
Absolutely.
I don't know that I've ever heard of anyone learning coding after learning command blocks.
Well, I don't know anything about coding, but
All right, well, experiment. All right, we're going to teach you to
what I
code.
think. I've looked into it a few times, and from having used command blocks for so long, I see similarities where, like, oh yeah, I've done that with command blocks. Actually, that sort of rings a bell, and it does. I feel it does. It really would help if you started with command blocks first beforehand. Yeah.
See, I think the thing about programming is that the language of, you get so many different kinds of programming languages, but the absolute base rules of programming is always the same. You know, a yes, no, on, off, left, right. If this happens, do that.
The computer does exactly what you tell it to do. That's kind of that's the core rule of programming. And when it does something wrong, it's because you told it to do something wrong, and that's true in command blocks too.
Very much.
All right. Are Minecraft command block skills transferable into the real world?
Well, okay. Well, I would absolutely say yes. It's the skill set, the mindset, the way you look at a problem in Minecraft. Not only can that be transferred into programming, as we said before, but it can in anything else. You know, it can be. It's just the analytical way of looking at things.
Yeah, I mean, I think coding, going and getting my computer science degree was one of the best things that ever happened to my brain. It taught me how to think about the world in just a very structured way, and I think command blocks do much the same thing. I think it's really valuable, and I think, and parents, you should encourage your kids to
Absolutely.
Or yourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
or yourselves. Yeah. Okay, what resources do you use to help with command block creations? We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Minecraft wiki, forums.
See, it's a lot of people think we sit there for hours and hours and hours typing out a command, but quite often we just, like anybody else, just use a generator to do the things that we have done that. We have sat down and we have coded this thing.
Yeah.
But once you've coded it and once you understand what each bit does, it's easier and faster just to use a generator to do that.
Absolutely.
I've written a lot of MC edit filters is what they're called. They're just like little scripts that allow you to put blocks into the world or modify blocks in the world in MC edit. I've written a lot of these things just to generate a specific set of command blocks. So it's actually very useful to be able to code in order to do command block stuff. What other resources do you think?
Yeah, just general third-party tools like trying to stack things and armor stand.
Oh yeah, there's
poses and stuff.
Yeah, there's various websites that will like create code to do certain things. A Telraw generator. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but it's
Very
Answer the
useful.
question. Telraw, anybody?
Does anyone know what
Yeah.
Telraw is? It's
a
a way
phenomenon.
of like displaying text, but you can display like colored text, or you display a player's score, or you can do a lot with stuff in terms of displaying text, and so it's really useful to have. It's the stuff you have to type. The syntax is really complicated for it, so it's really useful to have one.
Yeah, so have you ever used like a book or seen anybody use a book where they click a link and magical stuff happens? That would have been a Telraw book, basically. Nasty, nasty to write.
Yeah, I've tried to steer clear from them, and they terrify me.
Do you have a favorite command? What is it and why? Entity data.
I would say that execute is the best
wait.
command.
No, it's execute.
Seriously, come on.
No, you're right.
Once execute was added to the game.
Yeah.
No, it's execute. It's execute for
It
sure.
is-
What
it
am I
is.
talking about?
Yeah, execute was one of the most fun. Executes I would see there as the same level as when command blocks were added. It changed the game
absolutely.
completely.
Okay, so execute is a command that runs another command, and it's like, why is that useful? Because you're still just running a command. But the deal is that it runs the command. Usually a command is run from the point of view of a command block,
Or the player if they type
or
the
the
command
player
out,
if they
yeah.
type it.
Yeah, so if the command block's here in the world
yeah.
and a player is there,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, this command block is running that command and affects the area around it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the execute then allows that command block to actually run that command from the viewpoint of this player.
It uses an entity or a player as kind of like a medium to execute the command, as if, for example, if you do execute armor stand on an armor stand, it will assume the armor stand executed that command. So that's very good for doing stuff relative to things, I found.
It's good for everything. It's yeah. I can't believe I said entity data. I feel like such a fool.
What a fool.
All right.
I must say one other command that I really like is particle, because it allows, when we're dealing with a lot of invisible entities, it's easy to find which entity you're looking at by executing a command, a particle command at that.
I usually, when I have invisible mobs or whatever in my world, I usually just go to spectator mode.
I always forget that I'm in spectator mode, and then I do all weird things, and yeah.
Okay. We have one more preset question, and after that, we are going to open it up to Q&A. So you can line up in the middle here to do participate in the Q&A. We do ask that you try and keep your question relatively short, and also don't ask about like a specific
Solution
thing that you're working on, like a specific command. Try not to use any like syntax in your question for an actual command. Try and keep it more general, because what you're working on, that more specific thing, is just not going to be applicable to other people. So go ahead and line up in the middle if you have a question, and we're going to ask one last command. Or sorry, I got commands on the mind. We're going to ask one last question. How do you keep track of which command block does what in a big build?
Okay, I use signs.
Signs?
Because I'll be the only person who ever reads signs.
Honestly, sometimes I don't, and then I have a hard time finding things. Yeah.
I sometimes use carpets,
Carpets,
which
I've
are
heard of that,
which are
yeah.
kind of
Color-coded.
bad when you
Yeah.
have to look down at them, but they can be quite good sometimes in some occasions.
All right. Well, we have a line, and I'm sure we can't possibly get to everyone, but we're going to do our best. So let's start with the first question from the audience. And if you could try and keep it down, because, we are still
Some people.
doing a panel. Thank you. All right. What's the first question?
Is it possible to add like a command that doesn't, or like an enchantment to an item that doesn't exist, and
Like a new enchantment, something that's not in the game?
and it does like a special effect, like add a status ailment to something?
When you're doing command block stuff, you have to get creative, because there's a lot that you can't do. Like we talked about earlier, right? We had a whole question about it. You cannot add a new command in terms of like a command that's named like dazzling, or I don't know, that was a weird example. But
You could maybe use something like the query.
you can't. I mean, there's no way to add an enchantment that doesn't
no,
exist.
yeah.
But what you can do is you can say rename the item to like boots of kicking creepers' butts, right? And you can detect that the player is wearing the boots, and give them some bonus if they're near a creeper or something like that, like a strength effect or something. So you have to get creative about how you do it.
Is it possible through an MC edit? Is it possible through MC edit?
No, if it's not possible through command blocks, it's
Yeah.
definitely not possible through
Yeah.
MC Edit. Yeah, thanks. Try and keep it to one question each, please. Thank you.
What is the biggest fail you've ever done by when writing a command block script?
It's the biggest fail we've ever.
It's too many.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's so easy to just completely destroy your world.
Exactly.
Actually, the easiest thing is just you type /kill at
Oh no.
E, and you put some brackets and you type some text, and you're trying to kill like all the creepers that have a certain scoreboard value, but you made a mistake, and every single mob and player in your world dies.
And then
Forever.
and
It's
then-
on a clock.
And then
Yeah.
you've actually got quite an advanced mechanic that uses all of these entities to make it work.
Right, and now it's just dead.
gone.
You can also do things like spawn a million, ender dragons in your world, and it's so many mobs that like you actually just it crashes Minecraft whenever you try and open it, and you just have to use some external editing tool to try and
Get rid
salvage
of
the
them.
world. And
MC Edit saves the day.
And hint, never make a mob invulnerable and then TP them into the void repeatedly.
no, it kills them. Oh, repeatedly?
No, I've made it where I've TP'd them so deep down into the void, a special filter had to be written to remove them, and that still didn't work, and I had to go to a backup. These are the bees I'm talking about.
There's so many fails is the answer. Yeah, you screw up all the time, and you keep frequent backups is the answer. Yeah.
One big problem I have run into with command blocks is when you're making a 20 hertz clock or a 10 hertz clock even, is when you have your world shut down and you bring it back up, the clock doesn't run. You have to reset it manually every time. Do you have any suggestions on how to have it start itself automatically?
Well, what I try and do, so he asked about clocks, right? And sometimes when you close the world and reopen it, the clock just stops working. Yeah. And often the reason for that is that the clock is kind of in between two chunks. And the chunks in Minecraft are 16 by 16 regions that load separately. And sometimes one will load before the other, and so it'll just break the clock because the commands need to be running all the time in order for the clock to keep going. So the best thing you can do is keep the clocks within a chunk.
Yeah, so if it doesn't work, move it, basically.
Yeah.
And try again.
This question is to all of you. What was like your first command block creation, which wasn't rubbish, I guess?
Well, I think the first one I can remember offhand, this was certainly not my first one because, actually no, maybe I do, maybe I can think of my first one. I made a little prototype for a control point map. It was a very small thing, and it teleported the players around. And actually, pretty soon after, I worked with Hypixel, and we made a Team Fortress 2 map based on those mechanics. And I think that's right. I might be misremembering though. It was a long time ago.
That's 2 years.
Probably 3 actually.
Three, yeah.
Yeah, 2.5.
For me, it was changing a player's game mode when they enter and exit a particular area, so that I protected that area from people doing things to that area that I didn't want them to do.
So they could be fly around in creative, most places, but if they're in a protected area, they couldn't. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. That was my first one.
I made sort of a kind of like a boss sort of that sort of used teleportation to change the position of the player, so that the boss sort of changed. It was pretty bad.
But I think we all had a need, didn't we? We tried to solve a need or a problem that we were having with command blocks, and that's why we did it the first time.
You mentioned before, enchanting an item by having boots on that give you a special effect while you're near a creeper. How would you detect whether you're wearing or holding a certain item?
You might. So that is called that's something called a partial MBT data match. Okay, this is advanced stuff, and it is you apply a scoreboard score to a player that's wearing the boots. Okay, and then when they take off the boots, that score is removed. And then you can run anything you want against that player because of that scoreboard score. So this actually now very nicely comes.
Take a look. I kind of explained the concept in a video I did about active camouflage. So if you can find that video, it explains how you can set scoreboard values and run commands for players or mobs wearing certain equipment.
Have any of you ever done a command block creation where afterwards you're just like, what have I done?
I believe we covered this with the epic fails section of the panel. Oh, in a hilarious way?
That was hilarious.
Chickens.
Chickens?
Chickens. Crashing your world with chickens.
Crashing your worlds with chickens. What about just a hilarious, awesome, I didn't expect that to happen sort of thing?
No, chickens. I didn't expect the chickens to happen.
Sometimes you just don't expect the chickens.
No.
I'm trying to think. I feel like crazy stuff must have happened by accident. I think most of the time when it happens, it's just oh my God, there are so many creepers spewing out of my mouth right now, and I don't have any way of stopping it because I'm every time I try and right-click on a command block, I'm right-clicking on a creeper, and there's just that sort of thing. It can get pretty silly.
Or doing teleportations on a clock and changing things, and never mind.
Once you've come up with an idea for a contraption or something, how long does it take you to plan out how it would work or something?
Good question.
I think that varies from what it is. It could take half an hour, or it could take 2 weeks, to be honest.
And it's
It
quite
really
often
depends.
the half an hour thing you think it's going to take that takes 3 days.
I think you would be shocked by the number of kind of like my most viewed videos that are things that I actually built and recorded and uploaded within like 2 hours or less. Like
That happens quite often, actually.
sometimes you just you know something and you just can put it into action. But it's definitely not always true. And sometimes I've definitely spent several days banging my head against the wall trying to figure out how to get this thing, because I've got it almost just working, but it's not quite there. So it really varies just if you happen to get it.
What were your least favorite running creations?
Least favorite, sorry, what creations?
Running, like they worked.
Oh, functional.
So something you made that works but you don't like. Chickens.
That's going to be the answers. All the answers to the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, this might be a bit more of a suggestion than a question, but could you please make like videos about how to turn these really easy commands like test for into executes and like advanced stuff like that? Because that's what I've been running into problems with, like starting to learn command blocks a lot. Because at one point test force just won't do the trick anymore. You want to use executes, but it's just getting into that section it's really hard.
I don't ever use test for at all.
Well, in video tutorials, etc.
And yeah, basically you can do the exact same thing you would do with test for by just using a scoreboard command with just the same MBT data at the end. That's
mixed with execute as well.
I mean, the only time I ever use a test for is when I'm actually trying to diagnose something, because it's a very quick, easy way to test something.
It is complicated though. It is complicated. Like we can't. I'm not sure I could make one video about it and really cover everything that needs to be covered. But yeah, I mean, suggestion taken. We'll we try our best to teach, and so that's something that we can maybe work on.
See, the big thing is, if we do, as Seth said, if we make a video about these kind of things, the video itself will be so long that it's not practical really. You'd be bored.
You said you did mathematical functions with the scoreboard. How did you do those?
With a lot of really long commands. The scoreboard has some. Basically, the scoreboard there are some commands for the scoreboard that let you add together, one entity or player's score to another's, and you can multiply them by each other too. And so you just have to create a lot of scoreboard values, maybe on the same player or entity, and just write a bunch of commands that move the data around and multiply them and add them and stuff. And it can get tedious to keep track of where all the data is and what the actual calculation that you're making is. But yeah, all the functionality is there in the scoreboard player's operation command to do arithmetic. You can do multiplication, division, modulus arithmetic, division, subtraction, addition. That's the percent sign, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where to look.
What does a falling sand barrier look like?
I don't know if it even has a
Yellow.
texture. The falling, if a falling sand had the barrier as a block ID.
Oh.
Yeah,
It might just be.
I think it would look like falling. I think it would just look like sand. But hey, try it for yourself. Find out. That's the
the
type of
beauty,
thing
yeah.
is when you wonder this sort of thing. When we wonder this sort of thing, we just try it, see what
Test out,
happens.
see what happens.
And
You might learn
maybe
something.
you'll discover the next really cool feature of command blocks that way.
What would you make if entity data worked with players?
Gravity.
Yes, gravity. Changing momentum would be amazing.
Being able to set the motion on players is one of my most requested features, I would say. So it's doing things, not just gravity, but also long
Velocity.
jumps,
Yes.
or just you could do all kinds of things. It's mostly, I think motion is the biggest one that I would want to.
You can do a lot of the stuff with like replace item and stuff now. So yeah, just
But no, motion definitely. Wow.
Black hole.
Yeah, that actually pulls quite nicely into my question, which was, do you think the ability to get and set player trajectory and velocity would be a good feature generally?
That is exactly what
absolutely.
I said. Would be my most most wanted feature. Yes, I really want that.
If command blocks had never existed, what do you think you'd be famous on YouTube for doing?
Well, let's be honest. We would all be famous on YouTube still.
Hopefully.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Cat videos.
I mean, I actually, I think we all kind of had a following before command blocks existed.
Yeah, I mean, beforehand it was all survival based, so we'd probably be doing.
Well, no, I did plenty of. I don't know. There was creative.
No, I don't mean survival based like that. I mean like.
Just redstone.
Most things would work in survival as well,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
opposed to command block, which
So
obviously
you sort of
don't.
like invented redstone contraptions, and we did a lot of that.
Exactly.
And but command blocks are just
They can just do too
the
much at
newer
this
thing,
point.
and that's what you do, right?
It's more efficient.
So yeah, probably we'd mostly be on redstone, or maybe we would have moved on and done something else. Maybe we wouldn't be famous on YouTube. I don't think so, though. I think we would be famous on YouTube.
Yeah. Not all of us that famous, but we're not safe.
About how long does it take you to make like a custom map, such as like the Splatoon map?
Splatoon probably took 3 or 4 days, maybe 5.
Really? 3 or 4 days?
Is that all?
That's impressive.
Wow, very impressive.
Well, very efficient.
One thing that I'm really good at is just being able to like plan it all in my head. And so when I get started, I don't have to spend a bunch of time on the planning phase because it's kind of most of the work is done on that in my head. And yeah, so most of my maps actually take less than a week to build. Just because I mean I have to run a YouTube channel. It's my job. It's how I make a living. So I can't afford to take more time than that. We have 4 minutes left in the panel, so we can only take a couple more questions. But so probably.
Are you creating, or are you planning to create a one command block creation?
Sorry.
Are you planning to create a one command block creation?
Seth is the original grandfather of one creations. I mean, look at that mountain he made out of one command blocks before it was a fad.
I did put out a video before anyone else, I think, about how to build a large structure. It was just a mountain made out of stone or something.
And that was really one command.
That was a one command block creation, I think. Yeah, I mean, so the one command block creations are this thing where you can have a really long command with like 20,000 letters in it, right? And you paste it into a command block and run the command block, and it creates a whole structure for you. And they're kind of interesting, and it's a cool way to install these like command block contraptions in your world. I don't typically use them, honestly, because my command block contraptions are probably too big to fit within the 32,768 command character limit, just because it takes a lot of characters for each block that you want to put in there.
I mean, I've started using them now to actually patch existing maps when Mojang breaks them.
Oh, yeah, that's actually a pretty good application.
Do you think redstone contraption, real redstone, is still useful and creative now that there is command blocks?
Okay, so let's be honest. This is Minecraft as a game, right? Like, what's useful is what's interesting and fun for you. So, if creating custom maps is fun for you, then that's what you should do. If playing custom maps is fun for you, then that's what you should do. But I mean, I think survival redstone totally has a place as something that's useful for letting people learn about kind of digital logic circuitry.
And you actually need that to progress into command blocks, I would say.
Yeah.
Because we were all redstoneers before.
Sort of, but not necessarily. You don't really need to know, all the like latches and stuff anymore. I don't think.
Yeah. But it's the whole thing about on/off RS null latches and all of that thing. I mean, you do use that in command blocks
I never do. I always use something like with a scoreboard or.
No, but that's what I mean. You recreate it using the scoreboard.
Yeah, but it doesn't always follow the the same logic.
The mindset. Okay, we will have words
I think
afterwards.
disagreement here. All right, we have one more question.
If you could add like any kind of block or item that would help you with making your command block creations, what would you add?
Well, I kind of like the idea of a block that it's like a command block, but you can have multiple commands in it, and you can just have it run multiple commands all at once.
Auto-running commands. Or clock block.
Yeah.
That would be very useful.
I would say
both in one. Why not?
A clock block. Where you
have to be very careful when you say that
That's
word.
why I'm being very careful saying this.
We're not talking about chickens.
Block. Where we can, a block where you can set, you want this to run at 10 hertz, 5 hertz, 1 hertz.
That would be cool.
See, that would be.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out to the Command Block panel. I hope you learned something.
Thank you.
I hope you're inspired. So enjoy the rest of MINECON. Unfortunately, I can't stick around for signing afterwards. I have a thing I have to go to. I don't know if you guys are,
I don't think people want.
Okay.
Only people want, really.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.